Good afternoon, Metatopia. I am Avonelle Wing, and I am here with Anya Combs of Kickstarter. She has agreed to join us today and answer our questions about Kickstarter.
hmm
So, obviously, this is an audience encouraged panel. Anya, do you want to just introduce yourself quickly and tell us a little bit about what you do at Kickstarter?
Sure. Hi everyone. My name is Anya. I'm the director of games at Kickstarter. I am responsible for the entirety of the category. That includes tabletop games, video games, card games, mobile games, VR, anything that is associated with games. I am responsible for the health of the category. So that's a lot of like doing a lot of emails, doing a lot of meetings, previously going to a lot of conventions. We'll kind of see what that world looks like as this thing continues. But it's a lot of campaign management, a lot of campaign feedback. It's definitely the most unique job that I've ever had, but it's pretty cool.
Awesome. Um, so, you mentioned the state of the world currently. I imagine that you've had a bunch of things that have stayed exactly the same, and it's, still lots of emails and lots of meetings. What has changed for people that are running games campaigns in the last 18 months?
Well, the biggest thing has definitely been the shipping issue. Shipping has become a huge topic of discussion in a way that to be totally honest, don't fully understand the ins and outs of it. I'm very just sort of like, light touch sort of situation. That's been a huge issue. The biggest one, aside from that I've seen, is being able to playtest. Playtesting games has been really difficult. I mean, it's a little bit easier now, but from like April of 2020 to about February of this year, so almost for a full year, there was a lot of questioning of like, how are you able to playtest a game when touch is such an important part of our industry? Um,
Right.
so things like Tabletop Simulator has been great. Also, just I know people that have potted up together have, you know, essentially used each other as a testing space. The challenge with that is, when you're playtesting, you want to have a wide variety of different types of people who play games, and so you're sort of beholden to a small amount of people around you. But as things start to open up a little bit more, and as we have PAX Unplugged coming up in less than like 6 weeks. That has
Jeez.
definitely, I know. I was like, oh God. So things like PAX Unplugged opening up, and then also, with Gen Con that happened and Origins happened. So with conventions starting to happen a little bit more, playtesting is a little bit easier. But
Mhm.
there's still definitely some sort of like health guidelines that you want to adhere to.
Right. So it sounds like the actual create your campaign, have a good product, follow the best practices are still all in play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that has definitely not changed. The sort of core of Kickstarter is absolutely the same.
Okay. Um, I know that last year we talked about some of the like myths that exist out there about Kickstarter. Is there anything that you've learned in the last year that really you think should be shared with people who create campaigns, or patterns that you've seen that you would like to be like, you guys just don't, or please do more of this?
Yeah, I mean, showing gameplay is always going to be huge and something that we want to see. Um, Show your game. Like,
Mhm.
I've seen a weird trend recently, and I feel like this always happens at the end of the year. But there's sort of this is definitely in the bucket of like, don't do this, which is not telling anybody about your game and then launching a Kickstarter project. Um, it that is a very like traditional press way of doing things, and Kickstarter is not traditional press. Press doesn't really have much of an impact on Kickstarter projects, to be totally
Right.
honest. um, Things like influencers and YouTubers and streamers and things like that, like if you can get access to those spaces, that's great. You should pursue them, but they're not so important that they're going to make or break your campaign in any sense of the word. So if you are able to get, Kotaku to write about your game or something like that, and you know a bunch of people from Critical Role and they're going to play your game on stream, that's great. You should definitely pursue that. But just sort of understand that this is a way to sort of like generate buzz about the game versus actually bringing in pledges about the game. So the days of just sort of like launching a Kickstarter project and being like, yeah, people will find it no problem, especially during the holiday season, which we're really sort of like gearing up towards now. It'll happen in about 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. So like less projects sort of launching around this time. That does not mean that people are just automatically going to find your project. You
Right.
need to do the work ahead of time. You need to sort of like let people know at least 30 days before you launch your campaign, like, hey, this Kickstarter project's coming.
And let people know how. What are the best methods that you've seen for people promoting their Kickstarter?
So one is through actually on Kickstarter itself. So once your project has been approved, you have the option to create something called a pre-launch page, which is basically just like a static image and then a line of text. And you can customize that to say like live in 30 days, right? I cannot remember for the life of me who did that, but somebody did a countdown. So each day leading up to their campaign, they updated their pre-launch page that said like live in 25 days, live in 24 days, live in 23 days until the actual launch of the project. But that is a great way to sort of say like, cool, I can kind of see how many followers are actually on this project. You need to have 10 followers before you can see your follower count. And that is public. Everybody can see that follower count. But that's a great sort of indication of like, okay, cool. I really thought that I would have 2,000 people following me. For some reason, only people are following me on this pre-launch page. I need to figure out what's going on here.
Right. Right.
Yeah. The other way too is like just through traditional avenues like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, not so much, only because of the way that Instagram is sort of works. Although now I believe that they just rolled out like live links in stories, so I'm not sure if that's going to have much of an impact on us. We'll kind of see what happens.
Right.
Uh, which was something that was only for like certain people, but now everybody can post a link in your Instagram story, which is great. So we'll kind of see what happens. But Twitter, Facebook, email lists, Board Game Geek, stuff like that. Yeah.
Excellent. Um, it's interesting because we also see cycles where things come back around,
Yeah.
and I have to keep this really quiet because it'll get spoiled or someone will steal it from me, or right, that traditional press, I need NDAs for this thing,
Yeah.
is a thing that comes around cyclically. And I really do see more of it and hear more of it from people in the stretch between like Gen Con and the end of the year
Yeah.
than I do in the first half of the year. And
Yeah.
it's interesting that you see that pattern too.
Yeah.
That's just weird.
Yeah, I don't really know why that is. I don't know what it is about the time of year. I don't know if there's some sort of like unconscious thing of like September is like a back to school time, and so maybe there's some sort of thing.
Right.
I honestly have no idea.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that for you, the holiday ramp up starts soon. That's actually very much off kilter from how it works for retail. So talk to me a little bit about what that cycle looks like for you.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons that it starts a little bit early is because of when the campaigns actually end. So it starts a little bit earlier because if you launch your project in the beginning of November, so if you launch your project Monday, November 1st, you are likely to end around December 1st or like December 3rd-ish, roughly, right? So that 30-day sort of campaign cycle. So that means that you have to work through the Thanksgiving holiday, and you have to think about sort of the upcoming Christmas holiday and
Right.
Hanukkah and various other just like holidays that are sort of happening, right?
Right.
So one of the challenges there is we are not a store. Kickstarter is not a store. Kickstarter is not like an online site that you just like go buy Christmas gifts for, right? Like the projects are sort of, you have to wait for the thing to come when it's ready.
Right.
So most backers are focused more on like the gifts that they have to buy for people in their life, their travel, their expenses, and things like that around the holiday. Also, it's not uncommon for layoffs to happen around holidays, or for people, especially now, to just sort of decide that they don't want to stay at their job. So the sort of like life cycles that happen, right? There's this whole thing about like new year, new me, which is nonsense, but but like, you know, that's in a lot of people's minds of like, I'm going to quit my job and then come January 1st, I'm going to start looking for, or January 2nd, whatever, right? And so thinking about their finances within these sort of like life moves and things like that. So the holiday cycle for us starts It has started. It's typically why we tell people the last time that you want to launch a project is roughly the beginning of October, because you will end around the beginning to mid-November, and come now-ish, mid-November definitely, the number of backers we see declines, the number of projects we see declines. Again, people are sort of focused on the upcoming holiday season.
Right. That's interesting. And for people who are listening, I've actually been talking to a lot of people about the fact that the retail cycle this year has been completely wonky. And I had retailers telling me that they weren't bringing anything into the store after this weekend. And so for the retail, not the purchasing, but the actual like buying to sell to people, do you think that the shipping issues and the state of the world is going to change what your end of year cycle looks like?
For launching projects, I would say probably not, only
Okay.
because the amount of work that it goes into sort of like knowing what your shipping is going to be for a project, so much of that is done ahead of time that I see more people sort of delaying until going into next year. So
Right.
I guess if there was any sort of change, it would be that more projects are going to be delaying going into like January, February, March-ish of next
Right.
year.
Okay. Interesting.
Mhm.
That's something for publishers to really keep in mind. One, that there might be a little bit of space in breathing
Mhm.
space in there to jump in and run a campaign,
Mhm.
but also that keep an eye out for what happens in January, February, March.
Mhm.
If you're planning on a campaign for quarter 1 next year, maybe be aware that it might get a little complicated.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right, from the audience, our Rook Games says, apologies if this duplicates a question from last year. I know that some companies and creators are able to run simultaneous Kickstarters or run a new Kickstarter before their previous one fulfills, but other creators are asked not to do that. How do new creators build the trust and credibility with Kickstarter to be able to run overlapping campaigns?
So this is a very, very big topic of discussion.
I'm
We actually
sure.
recently rolled out, we actually recently rolled out a little bit of clarity on this in our help center. So here's the deal. If you are a first-time creator and you have launched a project and you have not fulfilled that project and you want to launch a second project, how is that trust being built at all, right? So
Right.
the easiest answer here is fulfill your campaign. We understand that things happen, we understand that there are delays, but you have to sort of like build that trust with us, and you have to show a proven track record before you can just launch a whole bunch of campaigns. The other thing to keep in mind here is there's a misconception that there are creators that just have 7 open projects and they could just launch whatever they want. That is not the case. We are in constant contact with as many creators as we possibly can, especially if we know they're going to have outstanding projects. There is an actual like decent amount of wiggle room on Kickstarter, but you have to come talk to us to let us know. So if you are now, let's say, into your third or your fourth campaign and you're like, look, my second campaign is going to be delayed in fulfillment, but I really, really need to launch this additional campaign, we can have that conversation.
Right.
But again, the way to sort of build to me this seems a little bit obvious, and so I hope this isn't coming off as like mean, but like you gotta fulfill your campaigns before you can launch new projects on Kickstarter. So there's again, it's not a situation where it's like there's just hundreds or even more than like 5 campaigns that haven't been fulfilled. Fulfilled is also like, one, we want to see that like where is it in a shipping center, or two,
Mhm.
are people actually receiving the project? It doesn't mean that like every single person needs to have received the project, but we need to see some sort of proof that it's either in the process of being fulfilled, or like are there backers that actually have received the project. So not 100% of people need to receive the project, but like, we want to see a significant number of people have received the project, because we again also understand shipping can get challenging, things get lost in the mail. International shipping in itself is a whole separate, just challenging sort of situation. But it's very much a good faith effort above all else.
Right. I'm going to guess that there's also a higher likelihood that if somebody has an unfilled campaign and tries to launch a new campaign without actually reaching out and saying, hey, I really need to launch this second campaign for whatever reason. Here's the email that says it's on a boat. I can't fulfill it because it's floating in circles around LA right now. That there's a higher likelihood that you're going to say, okay, cool. Then if they try to put it through the process, don't reach out, don't email you, don't say, hey, this is going on, and just then get bent when you're like, but you haven't fulfilled.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
There's some human nature stuff happening there where if Rook Games, people should communicate clearly with Kickstarter, should understand that if they say no, not yet, you're probably a first or second time person, or there's something about your process that flags and says, oh, we're not entirely sure, right? If you've promised free shipping to everybody forever and you are 2 years past your funding date, they're going to tell you no. Like there are some reasons and some flags that say maybe this isn't a good risk for us to allow our community to take. And thinking through from the Kickstarter perspective of how is this going to impact Kickstarter's credibility if they if I am a first time, right, I haven't fulfilled my first campaign, or I fulfilled a teeny tiny campaign and then my second one is gigantic and now I want to launch a third, but the second one there's no proof of concept there. I think that taking all of those things into account is really important for the relationship between creators and Kickstarter.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing too is like, we also don't want, like, backers are going to get upset if if you're just launching campaigns and you're not fulfilling anything. Like, not only is that it's not a great reflection on us, but it's also a terrible reflection on you. You could have the best of intent in doing that, but if your backers are seeing that why does this team keep launching projects and they're not fulfilling anything? You can explain until you're blue in the face what's going on, and there's always an exception to the rule of whatever it is. And let's say that you have the most like altruistic of intentions.
Yep.
Backers are typically just going to see but they're not fulfilling. Why are they able to launch all these projects? So that's going to create a bad experience for you as a creator, because you're going to have a bunch of pissed off backers who are saying, why is my thing not here? And why are you coming back?
Yep. You're dipping from the well and I haven't gotten my first thing.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers the question. I will keep an eye on the chat to see if there's a follow-up. Tony Plus One says, would love to know if y'all have made a choice to run Zine Quest next year or not. Any update?
We are still in the process of discussing that.
Excellent. Smirk and Dagger says, international backers are culturally used to seeing total pricing listed, unlike US backers who are used to seeing taxes and shipping added to the cost advertised. Now that VAT is more important to charge, is there a way that Kickstarter can allow creators to place those costs up front without being charged as though it was income? Creators are doing all of that in PMs to avoid being charged 10% of the shipping and private messages to avoid being charged 10% of the shipping and VAT, but international backers feel less comfortable with this after the fact.
Yeah, so VAT is a situation that I am not an expert in. The simple answer is we are sort of beholden to our current system. We're in constant conversation with different teams. We are in constant conversations with ourselves about things like that. But currently, it is not the easiest thing in the world for us to just sort of like make changes, unfortunately. And the back end side of Kickstarter. Right. I am happy to do a little bit more research just kind of into like what it is that we possibly can do there. But I know that our payment is constantly talking about this.
Okay. Just a little bit of experience on my side. That might actually be a question that you can talk to your accountant about. I happen to know this is coming from Kurt at Smirk and Dagger. So Kurt, I would say that the question of having it treated like income is it that there's tax forms that go out? I don't know. I feel like
Yeah, so it's part of it is like, I get a lot of tax related questions, and like one, I can't give out any sort of tax information or advice because one, I'm not an accountant, nor am I a lawyer. That is
Right.
not my job here at all. I am not an expert in taxes. I am not an expert in finances. That is not what I do here. I work fully on the creative side of things. I understand when creators get frustrated that I can't answer all of their questions, but I
Right.
am not a jack of all trades or Jill of all trades when it comes to a lot of this stuff. And specifically when it comes to taxes and accounting, I cannot actually answer your questions because I am not a lawyer, nor am I an accountant. You have to talk to a lawyer and you have to talk to an accountant about that stuff, unfortunately. Or fortunately, depending on how you look at it.
Right. Um, so just to double back and recap, you're gonna ask some questions and see if there's something that can be done, but ultimately the system does what it does and is stable and reliable, and you don't make changes to a stable, reliable system without being very, very cautious.
Yeah. I mean, we're always sort of looking at ways that we can improve, but again, like a lot of the questions that come around taxes, you need to be talking to somebody that is an expert in taxes and not me, works on the creative side of things.
So Kurt says it's about being charged on the taxes we charge by Kickstarter. Oh, so if Kurt charges tax
Mhm.
on something, Kickstarter then charges him a percentage of that as the Kickstarter fee, I
Mhm.
think is the question.
Yeah,
Okay, so
again,
that's
these are conversations that I am not equipped to be able to respond to because I work on the creative side. I do not work on the financial side.
okay, cool. So that's a question. Kurt, I'm just going to make a note and I'm going to email Anya afterwards and find out if there's somebody that can answer that
Mhm.
question somewhere else. Um, cool. Next question is so we don't have an answer. But I will follow up and not leave that hanging.
Mhm.
Um, what are the best practices for a game to be noticed and accepted by the projects we love program and email list?
So it's not a program, nor is it an email list. It's actually all hand curated by an editorial team. It's not, so to be totally clear, it's not a situation where you need to meet like specific metrics in terms of like, you need to have X amount of backers, you need to have X amount of, you need to have X amount funded or anything like that. It's purely based on what our editorial team is looking for and if we have space available in the calendar. So one, please do not email me if you have 48 hours left in your campaign and you say, how do I get featured? With 48 hours left in a campaign, it's almost impossible for us to do any sort of features. We want to know about projects ahead of time. It's really, really important, good for us to know, like, cool, this project is coming out in 2 weeks. Fantastic. Let's see how we can get you in the calendar. We also want to see that you've done work on your project. So you should have a video, you should have images, you should have text, you should like your project should showcase what the game is. It happens from time to time where I get, people that say, hey, I really want to be featured, and there's like no information on the page. So like I'm not sure why we would feature projects that don't really have much information. I appreciate the request, but the reality is like, our editorial team, we're sort of putting that like Kickstarter stamp of approval on those projects. We want to see that those projects are exceptional. And it's not just as simple as like, well, I like my project. Great. How are you communicating that though?
Right. We have 48 hours left on our campaign. Could you feature me? I deal with enough gamers and enough creatives to understand that it happens, but part of me is just like, how
Yeah.
can you even think that's possible?
Yeah. I get it.
So
Yeah. Ugh.
is there a way for a creator to, even when their page is in preview, to reach
Mhm.
out and be like, hey, I'd love to be considered. Am I close? Like, not a prompt, right? I know that editorial teams have their
Mhm.
own missions, but like, does this seem like a solid page? Does this seem like something that you would even consider? Is
Yeah,
that a thing that they can do?
absolutely. And you can email us at games@kickstarter.com.
Awesome. I feel like the answer to many, many of the questions that happen are email games@kickstarter.com.
Mhm. Yep.
Um, what if someone emails? So let's talk about the creator that's 48 hours from the end of their campaign
Mhm.
panicking and they send email at 9 p.m. on a Friday. What is a reasonable expectation of turnaround? I would, as somebody who manages an unruly inbox with a lot of communication, expect a week. Is that reasonable?
I think a week is reasonable. I would say, please do not email me at 9 p.m. on a Friday and then send me a DM on Twitter asking why I haven't responded to your email within 5 minutes, and then tag me in posts asking why I haven't responded to your email, and then continue to hit me up all weekend on social media platforms and continue to email me asking why you haven't heard back. I have worked really hard over the last year to put a boundary up with understanding that my full-time job is my full-time job from 10 to 6 p.m. onward. I am not accessible unless it is an emergency. Why don't I get a project we love badge is not an emergency.
Right.
I want to be very clear there. My project isn't live because there's some sort of technical issue. Absolutely. That is definitely an issue. There's a bunch of comments on my project that are super inflammatory and racist and horrible and bigoted. Yeah, definitely an emergency. But my working hours are my working hours. I am a human and I have a life outside of Kickstarter. I am not just Anya from Kickstarter. I'm also Anya, a musician. I'm also Anya with a partner that, I'm trying to have a functional romantic relationship. I'm Anya with a lot of different facets. So is John on my team and Michael on my team. So I've worked really hard to put those boundaries in place, not just with myself, but also with my teammates, and say, hey, no, you do not answer emails on the weekend unless it's an emergency. So it's not that we are ignoring you. It's that we also want to make sure that we are able to show up for our community in the best mental health space that we can be. And us working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we're not going to be at our best.
No.
So that is a thing that I have worked very hard over the last year to really push on my team. So I would say about a week.
Yes. One of the things that I am regularly saying to the Metatopia team when people say, how do I get people involved in the community, not the team? How do I get people involved? How do I get people to follow my game? How do I get people to back me? My answer is always be a good citizen. If you want Kickstarter to care about your campaign, you want Kickstarter to pay attention to what you're doing, you want Anya to be excited when emails show up in her box and you're asking for help, then you want to remember that the Kickstarter team is people who work for a corporation. This isn't this isn't a passion hobby. Yes, you are gamers, but it's not the same emotional investment as a creator who's freaking out because they are in a hyperfixation loop. That's not your problem. The 9 p.m. hyperfixation loop, not your job. And so I really think that the more people remember that, the more success they're going to have interacting with you and getting the systems to work the way that they would like them to.
Yeah.
So the brand Domino's says, that's fantastic information to know. I'm happy to hear that there's a great team behind the projects we love. I'll be sure to send that 2-week email like you recommended on Monday. Great talk and really appreciate the information.
Awesome.
One of the things I'm going to mention that I see people underutilize is the preview our campaign, give me feedback function.
Yeah.
I talk to new creators and I'm like, just put it up in preview and have people go and look at it. They're like, do what? And I imagine that there's plenty of documentation in your system on how to do this and why it has value, but I get a lot of, wait, what? So can you talk a little bit about what that feature does and why it's important?
Sure. So the preview option, so there's two different options there. There's a preview option to receive feedback, and then there's a pre-launch option. That is not receiving feedback. That's just a pre-launch page that you can collect information on in terms of followers. That's really about it. The preview preview and pre-launch, sometimes I get confused. Preview option. So anybody that has a Kickstarter account, if you show people a preview link for anyone that has a Kickstarter account, they can give you feedback on your campaign through a preview option. So if you're like, okay, here's the deal, we're 80% of the way there. Here's a link to, let's say that you send that to like 20 of your closest fans. And they all have Kickstarter accounts. They will log into their Kickstarter account and they can give you feedback directly onto your preview page itself, and you can collect that information however you want, do whatever you want with It's just as simple as sort of setting that link up, which you can do in the back end of Kickstarter. And if you have any issues or any questions about that, again, games@kickstarter.com.
I have empathy for this, and I would like to acknowledge this. And if you have a statement, you've kind of given one, give you the floor. But Kickstarter, because it's an institution, means that there's some built-in strife where people automatically, the imaginary, there's a vendetta and I didn't get onto the projects we love because, or
Right.
the Kickstarter didn't do this thing because they're an institution. I would love to give you an opportunity to talk about your philosophy and like the things that motivate you, because I imagine that you get Anya at Kickstarter says, and are just like, flip the table. I do this because of X, Y, or Z. So talk a little bit about either what, I don't know, I guess I'm acknowledging as somebody who also gets you're part of the man bullshit in the industry.
Yeah.
The floor is yours if there's a thing you would like to say on that topic.
So I am an advocate for creators. That is something I have built my entire career on. I've been in the games industry 13, 14 years. My background is in video games. The tabletop world is still new-ish to me, and the only reason I'm as ingrained in the tabletop community as I am is because I'm incredibly thankful to be part of this community. I also understand that I am a tiny part of this community, and I just happen to exist in a space that helps a large amount of creators. I think it is an unreasonable expectation for us to feature every single project. And if we were to do that, that feature doesn't mean anything. I also think that there is a misconception on what featuring a project actually does. So I understand wanting to receive that Projects We Love feature as an accolade. And I fully get that, and I fully understand that. I do not understand any upset or hurt feelings for a subjective badge.
Right.
That is ultimately what it is. That badge does not mean that guarantees that your project is going to fund. The badge does not mean that you can just stop doing the work. The badge does not mean that you will suddenly get this influx of pledges. It just means that you have a badge on your project, and that's great and that's awesome. But I would encourage everyone to think about the holistic view of your project versus I'm launching a Kickstarter project, and if I don't get this Projects We Love badge from Kickstarter, it means somehow that I am a failure. That does not, again, take away from the fact that roughly 60 to 70% of your pledges are going to come outside of Kickstarter. That badge doesn't take away from that. You still need to have 60 to 70. You still need to anticipate that about 60 to 70% of your pledges are going to come outside of Kickstarter. I do, for some reason this year, I don't know what happened this year, but the number of people and the number of emails I've gotten from upset creators that are so angry at me, so upset that Kickstarter didn't feature their project, and they have held us responsible for their project not being funded is kind of wild to me, and it's a little bit upsetting, and it's a little bit disturbing. I would also remind everyone that these are not, to me, just like games that are being made on Kickstarter. These are all small pieces of art, sometimes larger, sometimes bigger, sometimes medium sized, but these are all pieces of art, and art is inherently subjective. One person who might love your art, someone else might dislike it. And if you are going to be sent into an anxiety and hateful spiral because you didn't receive a Kickstarter badge of something that we or love or didn't love, I am nervous for what reviews of your game are going to be. I would really encourage people to take a little bit of a step back and sort of understand that while I personally I'd love to give that badge away and be like, everybody gets a Kickstarter Projects We Love badge. Right. But if you're going to send me angry emails about how I've ruined your project, I don't know if you're ready for game reviews, and you have a very long, painful road ahead of you that I'm quite frankly not interested participating in.
Right. Right. Um, that is absolutely a solid point. I mean, there stands the chance that enough people get nasty about it, and you just cut the program. Okay, you can't behave kindly and be excited for the people who did get projects we love badges. We're just gonna not, right? There's a point at which you just look at it and
Well,
go, okay, this is gross and feels terrible.
yeah. I don't know if bullying somebody into anything has ever yielded positive results.
No, no. So it's interesting because I wonder if there's a correlation between the increased conversation about, okay, but funded in 4 hours doesn't guarantee like doesn't
Mhm.
say anything intrinsic about your project, and so now people are looking for another metric that says, but I'm superlative.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm gonna double back. We talked about this last year,
Mhm.
and I was really it was interesting to hear your perspective on the funded in X hours. And I know that Kickstarter has taken steps to be like, please don't do this. Please, like you're perpetuating some toxic behavior. Let's not. Revisit for me. Someone puts up a thing that has a badge that says we funded in 4 hours. The
Mhm.
policy is no, correct?
The policy is they just look bad, quite honestly. So it's not that we're gonna like bury your project or anything like that. So the thing is this, your main project image should showcase what the game is. And so if you have all these badges on there where you're like funded in 4 hours, uh, loved by Kickstarter, or whatever it is, right? So all people are seeing are badges. They're not actually seeing your game. Why would you want to, like, the whole point is that you want people to see your game. Why would you not want people to see the piece of art that you're created? Why would you not want people to get, like, people are going to be more excited about the game that you've made over some completely innocuous superlative that I understand why it's great and it's awesome, and you should absolutely like highlight things like that. Don't use your main project image to do so. Post it in an update. Put those badges in the actual project page itself. But that main image should be what the game is, because that's going to be so much more important than anything else. It starts to look like uh it just starts to look like a website that has a like like if you go to like Old Navy and you just see all these pop-ups of like 15% off and new coats and stuff like that, and you're like, oh, this is just like, I'm just trying to get to the thing. This is like, I just needed to buy socks. Like, I just needed to buy socks, right? And
Yep.
you're just getting bombarded with all this other stuff where you're just like, but that's not what I'm interested in. That's
Right.
what it starts to look like with all of those badges and all of these, like, I understand the excitement behind it, but it's just superlatives that don't really mean anything to backers.
Right. So, what are the top 5 things that you mentioned the main product shot being the game.
Mhm.
And I'm also hearing a reoccurring theme of keep in mind that this is a piece of art that you are trying to entice people to participate in by funding it. What are the things that you really think, like the 5 places that creators should be spending time, energy, and money when they are creating their page, their Kickstarter page?
So, one, have images that actually showcase the game. Specifically for tabletop, have one main image that showcases what the entire game is, every single component in the box. You do not have to hire a like professional flashy photographer. There's a lot of amazing things that you can do with a mobile phone. So being able to just say like, here's the box, right? Here's like an image of the box. And here's every component. If it's a card game, if it's got meeple, whatever it is, like highlight all of that. Um, you definitely want to build a community. That is such a big one that I have to keep coming back to. Um, you want to build a community and you want to do that work early and often. Like you should be spending about 3 to 6 months before you even launch your Kickstarter of just building a community. Again, for some reason, there's been an influx of projects that have just launched on Kickstarter and then they email me and they're like, yeah, we don't actually have a community. So like if Kickstarter could just feature us, that'd be great. And I'm like, no. Like I don't, okay, let's say this is the greatest game that's ever existed and Kickstarter features it. You're still not, it's not going to equate the amount of work and the amount of community that you need to bring into the project itself.
Right.
So spending that time to build a community is important. You can do that for almost no money, but there are services available if you have the finances to do so. If you want to work with like a third-party company, like a Jallup or Jallup, I always mispronounce the name, but like a third-party agency is an option. I get a lot of questions of like, well, how do I build a community? A lot of it is it sucks and you just kind of have to stick with it, but there's so many resources available. So start following community managers on Twitter. Get yourself involved in Discords. Those are the things that are going to sort of like be the stand-ins for things like Gen Con and PAX and various other events and things like that, at least in the interim. Next year, probably things will be a little bit more, or I don't even want to say normal because nothing's ever going to go back to normal, but a little more
accessible,
commonplace. Yeah. So these online communities are incredibly important and participating in them, whether it's at a local level or something in a larger scale, like being part of the Metatopia Discord. But like, is there a Discord, a Slack group, a text chat of people in sort of like your local hometown who are all fans of board games?
Right.
Why are you not involved in that space?
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So what about for creators that are still in the process of designing the game and don't know what the final product is going to look like?
Mm-hmm.
What should they be focusing on in their images?
So your images on your Kickstarter page are going to have to be as like close to what the final game is going to look like. I think you really want to think about, where am I going to be getting my prototypes? Where can I talk to other game designers who maybe can help me through this process, or recommend other other publishers, whoever it is that you need to talk to. So much of this games is about connection, and is about the community of people that you're surrounding yourself with. So like the sort of secondary job of working in design or art product, whatever your job in games is, the secondary side of that is making sure that you have a community of people that are like looking out for you and will help you. Luckily in tabletop, that's pretty common, which is great. But like, if you start having questions of like, I'm just not happy with the art in the game in terms of like the production of the art, where can you go to fine tune some of that?
Right. So I get a sense that there's a fair number of people who create a campaign and really think that they're going to be able to fund their art or fund the prototype once the campaign funds.
Right.
And it sounds like you are recommending that not be the path that people follow. Am I hearing you correctly?
Right. So here's the challenge if you're like, I'm going to come to Kickstarter to fund a prototype. Now, this has happened. This has absolutely happened. The challenge here is, because we are a rewards-based platform, people aren't necessarily going to be thrilled about getting a prototype when they receive a reward. They're going to want the game, right? This is also just like, you can kind of thank your fellow game designers for this, but that is the commonplace thing on Kickstarter. If you are a creator and you're come to Kickstarter and you're like, cool, I'm going to fund my game, there is you are going to have to like do a lot of work to explain to people, like, it's not actually the game, it's the prototype. And you're going to have to explain to people that are like, well, why wouldn't you just give me the game? So if you are comfortable doing that work, which is a secondary layer of work on top of what you're already doing of running a Kickstarter project, go for it. That's totally cool, but that's something to keep in mind. Like, when projects launch on Kickstarter, people expect the game itself. I don't recommend using Kickstarter as a way to fund your prototype unless you have like a very specific reason for doing so, and I'm happy to have those conversations with people. But it's gonna be more of a challenging experience versus like just kind of, I hate to say this, but like sucking it up a little bit and knowing that you're gonna have to wait until you can actually like release the game. The good thing too, again, is like there are spaces that exist where they're like, great, we'll work with you to make sure that you get a prototype that you're happy with. But I think I just like try to put yourself in the shoes of the backers. I think that's a big thing that I would encourage people to do.
Excellent. How do people tell solid service providers versus kind of the weird predatory, overpromising service providers that have popped up around Kickstarter?
So 2 things. One, talk to other Kickstarter creators. Anybody who pitches you something and you're like, oh, this seems interesting, talk to anybody that has used those services, even if it's a reputable service. If you're like, I just don't know about BackerKit, great. Reach out to literally anybody that's used BackerKit, right? Any service that's out there, right? You should absolutely be talking to people that have used those services. And honestly, the biggest one, and this is just a life lesson that I am deeply trying to learn myself, trust your instincts. If you feel a red flag, if you have any inkling at all that you're like, something just seems off here, something is off. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody is predatory. It just means that they are not the right team or the right company for you. And that is okay. But you need to be able to trust your instincts and say, I don't feel this is correct for me. And obviously, if it's predatory and they're like stealing money from people, fucking out them. Blow them up. That's totally fine. I fully support that. But if it's something where you're just like, this just isn't the right business deal for me. I wish I hadn't have done it. And in retrospect sort of thing, I wish I had, because so much of this is you're like, I wish I'd listened to my instincts. Right. Listen to your instincts. You are going to know what's right for you above anybody else. So take that information, talk to people that have used these or whatever service, whatever company it is, and then assess for yourself which kind of like feels more in line with what it is that you're looking for.
I also want to add the counterpoint, which is that if you talk to a service and you are just over the moon, you are just like, they have promised me that I'm going to be able to buy a new house off of this campaign. Like, stop, back up. If there are no yellow or orange flags at all anywhere, I'm ready to sign on the dotted line right this instant. In my experience, that is as much a red flag as nothing but red flags. And you want to like put it on pause, sit on it for 2 weeks, see how they handle radio silence, right? If they are suddenly super aggressive, knocking on your door, like use boundaries to test whether or not this is a good fit and put yourself in timeout, right? It's like meeting a new friend and being like, I'm going to text them every 10 minutes. No, like chill out, back off. If you're being love bombed by a potential service provider, don't. Like that should be an internal, oh, that's uncomfortable. But if it doesn't cause that and it causes you to be Twitter pated by this service provider, back up, put it on pause and see what happens.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The number of people who have come to me and been like, I've found the solution to everything. And I'm like, okay, let's back this up.
I am constantly amazed that there seems to be this like idea in games that there is a company that is going to just be perfect. In the sense of like, this company is going to solve all my problems. And that just kind of doesn't exist, nor should it exist, quite honestly. That's the reason that there's so many different options and you're able to sort of like pick from so many different places so you can fine tune what your experience is, right? Because we could look at something like Amazon and be like, oh my God, Amazon's so incredible. What do? I just plug in my information and it's cheap, and the thing that I want comes right to my door. It's off of the backs of like workers who are not paid a fair wage. Like, absolutely not. I'm not giving that garbage company money. Like, that's disgusting, right? So like everything's at a price. You have to decide what your price is.
Right. So we have an audience question, and then I'm going to double back to that. Cool. Once a campaign goes live and you've contacted the journalists, the influencers making videos, and everyone in your family is sick and tired of hearing about your Kickstarter, what would you recommend to keep the fire burning through the end of the campaign?
Yeah, so the good thing is like towards the end of the campaign, roughly the last like 2 days, so when you pledge on Kickstarter, there's an option right above the pledge button. It's right below or above. I never. but it says remind me. And when you as a backer click the remind me button, that means that we're going to send them an email the last 24 hours that says, hey, this project is going to be live, is ending. Do you want to back this project? So you typically see a huge influx of pledges towards the last 72 to 48 hours of your campaign. It's that plateau period that people get so freaked out about, and that's where I get most of this, why won't you feature me, sort of like free emails, which again, I understand, but also y'all chill. So during that project plateau period, so Elon Lee, who runs Exploding Kittens, I think has the best sort of mentality about this, which is running a Kickstarter project is like having a 30-day party. And so the first 2 days is sort of when you send all your invites out before the party starts, right? And the party starts. And the first couple of hours is when so many people come and they're so excited and they're so happy to be there. And then you kind of have to convince all those people, how do they get all their friends to come to the party? And how do you keep those people at the party, knowing that some are going to leave and knowing that some people are going to be like, I went to that party and it just wasn't for me. That's also totally cool. But for the people that are excited and the people that want to stay, how do you get them to invite all of their friends? And then leading towards the last 48 hours of the campaign, how do you get those stragglers who are like, oh, it just takes me a little while to kind of show up places, and the people that are like, I only show up to parties at the end. I am one of those people. Cool.
Thank you.
So how do you get those people who are stragglers like me to say, cool, yeah, I actually super want to go to the end of that party. It seems like a cool experience that I want to participate in. I think that's such a great way to sort of look at a Kickstarter project. So that middle part is when you sort of want to what's the content that you're able to release then? What are the updates that you're able to? What's the cool, fun stuff that you're able to sort of showcase around that time so you can get those last stragglers in the door at the last minute?
Right. Okay. I think that's really, I like that metaphor, because anyone who's ever held a party that lasted more than 2 hours knows that there's ebbs and flows and you kind of have to ride it out.
Yep.
Cool. So the thing that was that I was thinking in response to your Amazon example, a number of years ago, there was Google is a company that's putting all this work into doing good things and smart things. And at some point, we crossed the threshold where Google became an institution, and institutions that aren't challenged fall into entropy, become corrupt, whatever. What does Kickstarter do internally to challenge itself to constantly not be that entity, not become that institution in the landscapes that you engage with?
A lot of it is that we sort of look to each other. We look at our staff and we sort of do a lot of internal reflection, say we don't have a lot of trans people on staff. Why is that? We don't have a lot of people of color on staff. Why is that? How are we able to represent communities of color? How are we able to represent marginalized communities if we as a staff don't even have the people that represent these self? So that's a big thing. There's a lot of internal discussion. We do this sort of corporate diversity training and things like that. But there's sort of an open policy at Kickstarter, which is you should question, and that's totally okay. I mean, this is a shirt that's actually from Kickstarter. Probably can't read it, but it says "fuck the monoculture," which they gave to us I think 3 or 4 years ago. And that's definitely been the ethos of Kickstarter since I've been here. Kickstarter as a company is going to change, especially over the last. It's been a company for 12 years. That's a long time for a startup to exist. That's a long time for us to no longer be a startup. I think the identity of Kickstarter is changing a little bit too, because we aren't a startup anymore. And I think anybody that says that we're a startup is just quite frankly wrong. But a lot of it is having the self-awareness to question each other and question, where are we? What are we doing? Why are we doing this?
Excellent. What's the difference in mentality between being a startup and not?
I think the biggest is that we cannot make excuses for a lot of things. Making excuses of well, we're just young. No, we're not. We're seasoned. We've been around for a long time. Um, I think with us no longer being a startup, I think the room for error changes significantly. Um, I I don't know if we've caught up with that. I think we're still kind of trying to figure that out.
Hmm.
But I would say that us being able to acknowledge like we are in a new phase of Kickstarter is probably exactly where we need to be 12 years into this.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Excellent. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left.
Cool.
Is there anything that you would like to add? Anything you want to double back to?
Um, I mean, I hope it's known that, so our staff, the game team at Kickstarter is very small. There's only 3 of us. It's myself, it's John Ritter Roderick, who's our senior tabletop person, and Michael Lieb, who is our European consultant, who like just got back this week from parental leave,
Mhm.
which is great. Congratulations to Michael. So we are a really, really small team. I am incredibly proud and incredibly impressed with everything that we can do, considering how small that we are. I was a little bit nervous in my work to put more boundaries in place of not having my team work themselves into the ground as we've done in years past. Um, I was a little bit nervous about what that would mean, but I have found that that was absolutely the right decision, because having that time to say, this is my time when I am this person from Kickstarter, and this is my time when my personal life. And John John came over to my place last night and had a skateboard in his trunk, and I was like, well, what are you doing, bud? You're just skateboarding around? Come on. Right? So like John being able to have his own hobby, Michael being able to have his own hobby, me being able to have my own hobbies, us being full holistic people and coming back to Kickstarter as employees and saying, cool, I'm now in a place where I'm able to really like give you my time and energy, has only yielded better results for us as um I have worked really hard to make that happen. So I want to be very clear that if you get a sort of "I'm not working right now" response, that's not us being rude or mean. That's us like putting a boundary up with someone is coming from a place of love. It's not coming from a place of hate. That's us saying, I want to be able to show up to you for you and the best way that I possibly can be. And that is the ethos that I'm carrying forward with me for as long as I'm able to have the job is running the game at Kickstarter. But I want to be very clear on that.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that and sharing it
Mhm.
so clearly. I am excited to hear that because I feel like the more we talk about those things, the more persistent and communal that mindset becomes.
Mhm.
So on that front, let's close with would you like to share one thing in your life that's bringing you joy right now?
Yeah, playing my saxophone.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's a weird thing that I've been doing for an incredibly long time. Um, I have worked really hard over the last 16 months, and I have found a new love for it in a way that I didn't know was possible, which is I'm so thankful for. And everything that I do as an artist outside of Kickstarter helps me work with artists for my job. So it's
Right.
like it all is connected in a way. And I was like, there's nothing I can do in my life that's going to take me away from art. It's what I'm surrounded by 100% of the time, which is what I want. It's all I want is to be surrounded by art in every capacity that I possibly can be. And it's all connected in that sense. And that is like, it brings me a lot of joy to be able to like take those pieces and make things make sense.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for bringing your whole self to this panel. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
absolutely.
All right, everybody, thank you for joining us. I'm going to reiterate that if you have a question, it's games@kickstarter.com. Be nice, and we will see you soon.
Thank you, everybody.